100 years ago, Nikola Tesla discovered a healing technology that threatened the entire pharmaceutical industry. The day he died, the government seized everything. For 100 years, this technology was hidden. Until now, plasma is back. Tesla Club, tzla.club.
Hello and welcome to The Legacy Show, where I look at the contents of my books over the last 36 years and relate them to current events. I want to concentrate in this Legacy Show on what it says about the invasion of Iraq, because it mirrors so much of the excuses and the preliminary sequence, if you like, to current events in the invasion of Iran. They say, I've heard this so many times. A few people can't control the world. Not possible. Well, currently, we have the official head politician in America, Trump, and the official head politician in Israel, Netanyahu. Two people, and they have taken decisions, been told what decisions to take, but officially two people. And those decisions now have the potential, indeed, at some level it will already happen, just a case of how extreme. Those decisions are going to affect every man, woman, and child on the planet, basically. Two people. So the idea that a few people can't control the world is, I'm sorry, ridiculous. However, it's amazing how high up the political greasy pole that it goes before you meet people who know what's going on. There are people in the British cabinet. Oh my goodness me, I've met people who are ministers over the years, going way back. Oh, you wouldn't let them run a lemonade stall or a whelk stall. I mean, it's breathtaking to listen to them. And you're sitting next to them, unfortunately, and you're listening to them, and you're thinking, you're running a ministry. No, the ministry's running them via the civil service. That's why they want ignoramuses, largely, in among the cold and calculated, to actually be in government. Now, many years ago, there's a radio show, I don't know if it's still going, a BBC radio show. It's called Any Questions. And I was asked on one of those when I was a national spokesman for the Green Party in the 1980s. And sitting next to me, representing the Labour Party, was a lady called Claire Short, still alive. And I liked her. I thought she was a genuine woman. I would disagree with some of what she said, some of what she wanted to do, but I found her to be a very genuine woman who did want the best for people. And she comes into this story in this way. Claire Short, who resigned as Blair's International Development Secretary in protest at the spin, the lies, said he had misled the public over the scale of the threat posed by Iraq to ensure support for the war. Quote, I have concluded that the PM decided to go to war in August sometime. That's before the next March when the invasion took place. And he duped us all along, she told the Sunday Telegraph. Quote, he had decided for reasons that he alone knows, or I think we know as well, to go to war over Iraq and to create this sense of urgency and drive it the way the intelligence was spun was part of that drive. So Claire Short is in the Blair government. And I think she genuinely didn't know the big picture, because hardly any of them do, of who actually was behind Blair and was behind Boy Bush when all this was going on, because they were just gophers. They still are. I mean, Boy Bush has just disappeared into the background. Best place for him. But Blair has not. So anyway, Short said that Blair secretly agreed with George Bush in the autumn of 2002 that they would invade Iraq the following spring, come what may. Now, that is backed by endless evidence. But again, what you're doing is you're bringing it out of the shadows and you're bringing it into the world that we see in terms of Bush and Blair agreed that they would invade Iraq the following spring. No. They were vehicles for the cult to ensure that the invasion of Iraq took place in the spring of 2003. This is how it works. So, the secrecy that followed, in which even Blair's cabinet was kept out of the loop, hampered the planning for the aftermath of the war and helped to produce the chaos and suffering that ensued, Claire Short said. The chaos and suffering that ensued produces what? Loosh. Perfect for the other dimensional force that controls the cult, which controls the Blairs and the Bushes and all the rest of them. So decisions were made in Blair's office in calls to President Bush, Short revealed, and in phone conversations between Blair's foreign policy advisor, Sir David Manning, the US National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, and no doubt others. But these are still gophers that are playing out what the shadows tell them to play out. Short said Blair had lied about wanting a second United Nations resolution supporting the invasion. He had lied by claiming that Iraq was an immediate threat to us in 45 minutes. And he lied that French President Jacques Chirac would veto a second resolution under any circumstances. This was not true, said Short. Tony Blair lies more often and more obviously, I write, than any other British politician of modern times, despite the fierce competition. And one reason he gets away with it is because it's beyond the comprehension of many that anyone could lie so constantly and blatantly to the people he is supposed to serve. Fortunately, more and more people are getting more and more streetwise to how that works. Politicians lie. Yeah? What else? Politicians lie. Well, so did Bush, Cheney, Rumsfeld, Wolfowitz, Powell, and their cabal, I write here. They are following the techniques, I write, of the Nazis, as outlined by Adolf Hitler in Mein Kampf. Here's a quote from it. All propaganda must be so popular and on such an intellectual level that even the most stupid of those towards whom it is directed will understand it. People can be made to perceive paradise as hell and the other way round, to consider the most wretched sort of life as paradise. So I go on. In the United States, leaked information from the Department of Defense revealed that a top secret report by the Defense Intelligence Agency in September 2002 concluded they could find no evidence of chemical weapons in Iraq. Obviously, they used them all on the Iranians. Some CIA officials distanced themselves from the Bush administration claims that Iraq posed an imminent threat. They said these claims were based on information given directly to Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld by a bloke who was well known at the time, Ahmed Shalabi, the leader of the CIA-funded Iraqi National Congress and the man the Pentagon would like to be leader of Iraq. Now, bring that forward to current times, and you have this character, this son of the Shah of Iran in America. He left with his dad in 1979 at the time of the Islamic Revolution, and he's been in America ever since. Now he wants to come back and lead the people and set them free. Well, fully enough, his father didn't. The Shah of Iran, who was put into power by the American government and its agencies, and I'm sure Israel was massively involved as well. And he ran Iran with a rod of iron, not least through something called the Savak secret police. Brutal. Extraordinary. But old Shalabi was there, feeding the information that the cultists wanted to hear. So, reports quoted CIA sources as saying that Shalabi's information was deeply suspect and largely based on hearsay from other defectors with vested interests in regime change. Bob Graham, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, said that as a member of that committee, he saw much evidence that didn't support the case. That evidence, which he saw that didn't support the case, was never declassified, he said. All this when the United States and Britain have access, I write, to a satellite surveillance system that can read your number plate from space. And this is how the Airman magazine described the capabilities of the Global Hawk unmanned surveillance plane deployed in Afghanistan and Iraq. And remember, this was 2003. Quote, on an early test, for example, Global Hawk flew at 56,000 feet over the Naval Weapons Center at China Lake in California. I've driven around that a couple of times, around the outside perimeter fence, I would add. The images it gathered were so clear that an electro-optical image stands out next to an FA-18 fighter. An infrared image showed where concrete had cooled down from the shadow of a C-130 that had recently taken off. 56,000 feet. And they couldn't locate weapons of mass destruction, even though they claimed them to exist. So then there's Colin Powell, and the United States claimed that a document existed to show that Niger had sold uranium to Iraq for nuclear weapons. This is another way that the Iraq justification story and the Iran justification story come together again. That Iraq and Saddam Hussein were gathering the ability to make a nuclear weapon. Ooh. So nuclear weapons always work because we just show them Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Well, who dropped those bombs? Oh, well, we did. So this document was exposed as a crude fake, this getting uranium from Niger, Saddam Hussein. This document was exposed as a crude fake by the International Atomic Agency. And Joseph Wilson, the US ambassador to Gabon from 1992 to 1995, wrote in the New York Times how he had been hired by the CIA to investigate the alleged Niger connection and had found no evidence. Why did you find no evidence? Because he made it up. They made it up. Powell made it up. They all made it up. He communicated his findings to the US government and he said, quote, based on my experience with the administration in the months leading up to the war, I have little choice but to conclude that some of the intelligence related to Iraq's nuclear weapons program was twisted to exaggerate the Iraqi threat. Was he talking about the invasion of Iraq or the invasion of Iran? Because it could be either. So Powell presented his evidence to the United Nations, well, his lack of it, Security Council. You'll remember that if you were around at the time, this ludicrous presentation, with his make-believe charts, intelligent satellite photographs, and recordings of phone calls by Iraqi officials. All bullshit, I write, and he knew it. It was the same with the drone aircraft that we were told could attack the east coast of the United States. Pure invention to sell a lie. When Bush and co. were caught out on the Iraq nuclear plans fabrication, they arranged for the CIA chief, George Tenet, to take the blame to protect them. He said it had been a CIA error. You mean you made it up? Yeah. Powell told the United Nations in February 2003 that Saddam had authorized his field commanders to use chemical weapons. So why weren't they used when the US and Britain invaded? And why weren't the weapons he authorized found when the Iraqi army was overrun? Powell was lying, I say here, speaking the bloody obvious, as he was with his claims that Saddam's weapon-making units were housed in trucks moving from place to place. It would be laughable if the outcome of the mendacity had not been so tragic for the people of Iraq. Behind Powell, when he made the UN address were blue drapes that were hung that morning behind him to cover a massive tapestry reproduction of Picasso's famous anti-war painting. And the UN's Stefan Dujarric said, quote, "We needed the right background that would work on television." No, you didn't want Powell explaining why we should invade Iraq with an anti-war painting behind him. Powell also said that they had intelligence proof that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, but could not give details for fear of exposing the informants to danger. So you don't have them then? No. The British Cabinet Minister, David Blunkett, is a former socialist, emphasis on the former. And now, in my view, I write here, the most right-wing Home Secretary of modern times. He said, even while the war was going on, that no chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons of mass destruction may be found, and yet this was the justification for the war. He said that, in any case, he rejoiced at the fall of Saddam Hussein and his regime, regardless of whether any weapons of mass destruction were found in Iraq or not. How many politicians have we heard in this period of the invasion of Iran that say something similar? It don't matter if they're not telling the truth, or we just need to get rid of the regime. Kill all those civilians while we're doing it. So I write, Rumsfeld's deputy and the real power in the Pentagon, this is the guy called Paul Wolfowitz, told Vanity Fair that the claims about Saddam's weapons capability were used to justify the war for, quote, bureaucratic reasons. It was the one reason everyone could agree on, he said. And remember, as I write here, remember, these genetic liars are the same people who told the world what happened on September 11th. Who did it and how? The official story of 9/11 that has been used to justify all the catastrophes in the Middle East that followed. So then there was a series of inquiries in Britain into why the claim of weapons of mass destruction turned out not to be true. Various inquiries, what were they called? There was the Chilcot inquiry. That was in 2009. That's Sir John Chilcot. He's a career, or was a career, civil servant who'd been part of something else called the Butler Review. This was published in 2004, and this was headed by Baron Butler of Brockwell, another career civil servant who had been cabinet secretary to Tony Blair. And the Chilcot inquiry, which took 7 years to report, had highly restrictive terms of reference, including that blame would not be apportioned, as he said in his opening remarks. And it found that major blunders by British intelligence had produced flawed information about weapons of mass destruction. You mean they lied through their teeth, and anything else you'd like to think of. But now I'm just going to come to this, to the trigger, Because as we move into the run-up to the invasion of Iran, there was a potential problem in that sequence, in that Barack Obama, along with members of the UN Security Council, or the permanent members like the US, the UK, China, France, and Russia, along with Germany and the EU on top of them, they came to an agreement with Iran in 2015 on nuclear weapons production that would clear out the sanctions against Iran in return for agreement not to produce a nuclear weapon and to have more enhanced and more detailed inspections by international atomic energy authorities. And the agreement came into being in 2016. And this was the year that Donald Trump was elected for the first time. Israel opposed this agreement because, of course, Netanyahu has always wanted to invade Iran. And then we had, in 2018, the Israel-owned Donald Trump deciding that he was going to trash America's part in this Iran agreement, and he was going to withdraw from it. And I can pick up that story in The Trigger, which is a book about 9/11 and what actually happened, as opposed to what we're told happened. And it goes into a lot of other areas as well. The first part of the book is about how the official story is literally, it's a joke, not a funny joke, a tragic joke. And in the second half of the book, I look at who actually was behind 9/11, and it wasn't 19 Arab hijackers. So anyway, I say here, Netanyahu, the ultra-Zionists and death cult, didn't want a peaceful agreement between the West and Iran because it's on their list for regime change. That's not pathetic, is it, really? He and his fellow crazies are obsessed with regime change in Iran, and Netanyahu was caught on video aired by Israeli television telling activists from his extremist terror-related Likud party that he had convinced Trump to withdraw from the nuclear agreement with Iran, which threw US-Iran relations into turmoil again when the deal had settled everything down. Iran had not started a war against another country for more than 200 years, still hasn't, and Netanyahu screams that in the Middle East, quote, those who are trying to kill us are being led by Iran, which openly and aggressively calls for the destruction of Israel. As I say here, I'm no supporter of the Iranian regime, but nor do I take such bullshit from Netanyahu in the ultra-Zionist campaign of inventing enemies to justify wars, regime change, and land acquisition, the same technique it has employed incessantly since Israel was established with US support in 1948. This book was published in 2019. Economic sanctions are the widespread weapon of choice employed by Trump against the countries his ultra-Zionist masters want regime changed. And the same ultra-Zionist list of countries have been ticked off and targeted one after the other, no matter what the apparently different presidents in the United States and leaders and parties in Europe. Without the trigger of 9/11, none of this would have happened on the scale that it has, I write. Watch for other countries on the list. Lebanon currently, Somalia and Sudan. Israel is desperately looking for an excuse to invade Lebanon. It's found one. After trying and failing before, while Sudan and Somalia have been devastated by civil war in the period since 9/11. There are so many conflicts going on that the media doesn't tell you about, including the mostly drone strike US bombing of, quote, Islamic militants in Somalia since 2007. Bombing was significantly increased at the start of 2019. And then, just to finish, I come to something I mentioned in another edition of the Legacy Show. Trump's biggest funder is the ultra-Zionist casino magnate Sheldon Adelson, while the Democrats are funded by ultra-Zionist George Soros. Ultra-Zionists, whatever they may claim for Soros, it's all a lie. And the ultra-Zionist financial and media mogul Haim Saban. Adelson and Netanyahu wanted Trump to delete the nuclear deal with Iran to reignite conflict on the road to regime change as per Project for the New American Century. And so Trump did. So, hope you got something out of that. It's fascinating to look at history and see what a guide it is to current times. See you next time. Bye.
In 1943, the government seized Nikola Tesla's most dangerous invention, a healing technology that threatened Big Pharma's entire empire. They buried it for 100 years, but it's back. And over 1,000 people worldwide are using it right now. When you join Tesla Club, you get your own Tesla plasma device, 5 times more powerful than the original Violet Ray and built to last. You join a private Telegram group where members share breakthroughs daily. Stroke recoveries, cancer reversals, chronic pain gone in minutes. These aren't stories. These are yesterday's posts. You get lifetime support from people who've been where you are. Technical guidance, therapeutic protocols, a group that actually understands. And you get access to hundreds of documented experiments, real members, real results, real transformations. No prescriptions, no waiting for permission, no begging doctors who don't believe you. Just you, your machine, and a movement taking health sovereignty back. We're Tesla Club, private science club for self-directed healing. Visit tzla.club. Join the revolution.
Plasma. It's back.